Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Midwife Sally, and on this show we talk about pregnancy, labor and delivery. Today it is on another level. Okay, we are going to talk about research. Yes. Research, yes. So we all know that we just had the current pandemic pass, okay, COVID-19, and I saw this article online by my own boss and I was so interested in it. So she's here for us to interview her about it. Her name is Dr. Martina Anto-Ocrah. She works at the Pittsburgh University in the US. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Midwife Sally. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here and truly honored to be here to talk about research that actually I do a lot with Midwife Sally on. So thank you for having me.
Yes, welcome. Okay, so before we go into it, how did your interest in research develop?
That's a really good question. And people have asked me all the time. And to tell you the truth, I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories. And so I thought, what can I do where I'll be able to tell stories that are impactful? So I'm an epidemiologist, a reproductive epidemiologist to be exact. So I study the epidemiology of human reproduction. And so I tell the story of data. So when I look at the numbers, to me, they're telling a story. And so in my brain, it translates to what story do I want to tell? And that's really how it evolved. It allows me to be creative.
Wow. So it means that for every data that you look at, it should bring out a story.
Yes.
Wow.
That's exactly it. Research is not just, I'm crunching numbers or, I'm just trying to force some things. I'm testing hypotheses. For me, research is a very creative process that starts with what story do I want to tell?
Wow, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, so recently I saw your research on COVID-19 and then menses.
Yes.
Yes, and that was very interesting for me because I didn't really think about it. Are people really being affected? How did that concept come to mind?
I love that. Again, so the concept came because I would be talking to some of my friends and they'll say, since the pandemic started, I feel as if things have changed with my menses. Things just seem a little bit weird. I kept it in the back of my mind. But then more and more people I'll talk to and then they'll say the same thing. And I knew at the time too, I was under a lot of stress. So thinking about women and stress, the stress was coming not just from the pandemic, but it was induced by the pandemic. So you are home as a woman. Now all your children don't get to go to school, right? You are their babysitter. You are the cook. You are the caretaker. So much stress. And actually, there's so much to show that gender equity changed. So there's stories to say that women's rights took a step back because the idea of women now being in the workplace had shifted.
Because you are home.
You are home. You are home and now you are back to being a mother. If you had a nanny before, you no longer have a nanny. If you had a caretaker before, you no longer have a caretaker. You are responsible 24/7. Now,
I didn't really think about the fact that women were just at home because for some of us, we're health workers, so we're still working. So I think that's really interesting. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so even if you are a health worker, so think about being a health worker and being at the front line. So you are nursing, you are a physician, you're at the front line. When you come home, the kids are still at home.
Oh, okay.
When you come home, you're still having to cook at home. When you come home, your spouse, previously if you come home, maybe your spouse was not home yet, he went out, but now he's there. So you're bringing the outside pressure and you're also bringing that home.
Okay.
So there was a lot of pressure. I think overall, everyone felt a lot of pressure. But for me, since I'm a reproductive epidemiologist and women's health is very near and dear to my heart, I wanted to study how all of that affected women.
Okay. So scientifically, does stress in itself, before we come to the research, does it affect your menses, that stress?
Yes. There's definitely literature to show that in very, very stressful situations, actually, your body shuts down what they call non-essential function. And your menses actually is part of it. So think about anorexia. When a woman has an eating disorder or when anyone has an eating disorder, I'm going to my examples are going to be specific to women because we're talking about women and because I do women's health research. So in anorexia, when someone starves their body to the point where they lose all the majority of their body fat, right? So, but the body wants to preserve. So a lot of things happen. So you may start seeing their nails look funny, their nails are falling off, their hair is falling out, their teeth look funny. Your body wants to preserve that. So what it does is it will also shut down. Yeah, you don't have enough fat, but it will also shut down non-essential functions. And menstruation is one of the things that will go.
Wow.
And actually, there's also literature to show that during World War I and World War II, in a lot of these female nurses, when they were out there during the war, they had that the war environment impacted their stress. And they studied refugees in Somalia and Ethiopia. And before war and after war, their menses also changed.
Wow.
So it's actually a very universal phenomenon.
Let me chip this in. Does it that the non-essential thing explain why sometimes I really get a lot of women just after weddings, like their menses were just, I don't know whether they're stressed or whatever, it just went on.
All of it. But it's actually very individual related. So some of us it will change, some of us it will not change, right? Okay. Everyone deals with stress very, very differently. Okay. Some people bleed heavily, some people it just stops altogether, but it has to be really, really extreme, because menses is something that your body really wants to protect. So until the body is under really extreme circumstances, then it will you will stop menstruating or that it will be affected. So this shows you how extreme things are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's come to the research. Tell us about the research itself, how it was done, maybe the sample, how you got it.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. So what I really wanted to do was I didn't want it to be a small sample, because if it's small, you can't generalize. You want it to be big where it's a little bit more generalizable or representative. So the first thing we did was we used internet, so social media methods. Instead of going one by one and interviewing people, we actually used a company. We used market research. I used to work in corporate America, so we used some of our market researching tools, which is that we will sample a big population. I wanted it to represent, so it's a U.S. study. I wanted it to represent women across the United States. So every single state was represented
in the US.
Wow. So that was very important, right? Because you don't want to say, and the reason why that was important was because in the US, different states have different COVID protocols, right? So if you only study New York, you say, because New York was more strict, it probably didn't affect California. Or because California was more strict, it didn't affect Florida. I wanted to show a universal across the states. So we went to the company, we were able to recruit over 1,000 women.
Well,
distributed across,
that's really a huge number.
Right? A huge number, but also representative. Every single state was represented, from Hawaii, Alaska, Puerto Rico, everywhere. So that was the first thing. So our recruitment approach was very novel in that we used a market research company and not necessarily traditional. And I think that's important, If you limit yourself to the traditional ways, you'll never grow. Yeah. But realizing that you can really expand and knowing that this got published is really, really good. And it shows that the innovation is there and they see it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then, of course, we wanted to make sure there was women of reproductive age. So women between the ages of 18 to 45. And that's what we really focused on. And they could not, we took anyone, but then in our analysis, we did what we call subgroup analysis. So we extrapolate, we take out, you have 1,000 women, but in the end, only 345 women were eligible for this particular one because they couldn't be on birth control.
Oh, okay.
We wanted to study natural cyclists. What birth control does is it protects women, right? So birth control gives you the hormones from the outside, the exogenous hormones, as opposed to your own body and what your body is doing. So in fact, though, it's interesting because some women who are on birth control have told me that even their menses change while on birth control. The difference is they'll react later because they get protected until all of a sudden the body's like, okay, no more. But the natural cyclists will be the ones who react quicker, and they're the more vulnerable group. So you definitely want to touch base on them right away. And then there was one more recruitment strategy that we used. So it was the birth control, was the age. We took all ages. And so how did we analyze stress? So there is a COVID stress scale that we used, and it's actually derived after another scale called the perceived stress scale. And so you can group people into high stress or low stress based on established cutoffs. Okay. So people just answer the questions, and we have high stress, low stress. And then for the menses questions, we developed them ourselves. We just, we created a survey, and we had OBGYNs on our team who confirmed and made sure that everything looked okay. Yeah, so we asked questions about menstrual flow. Has it changed compared to before the pandemic? Menstrual duration, is it longer, is it shorter? Spotting and flow. So we asked all those questions in there.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. So, how was the results? Let's talk about the results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was really, really exciting. So in those kinds of work, you would hope that you don't have too many people who are high stress, right? Because that's really, really bad. But we had enough of our high stress population. About 10% of our population was actually high stress, which is not too bad. So about 10% of our population was high stress, and what we saw was that women who were high stress actually reported changes in their menstrual flow, their menstrual duration, spotting, as well as the heaviness of their menstruation as well.
So when you say high stress, what do you mean? Like, what do you?
So according to the scale, the questions that they asked was compared to before the pandemic, do you feel as if your burden has increased? So those were some of the questions. Compared to before the pandemic, do you get agitated more easily? Compared to before the pandemic. So they're like some standard questions that are asked of that. And anyone who was sort of like answer. So it's, everyone sort of falls in the middle, but then there's some people who will select 5 or 4. So on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. Exactly. Then you're able to categorize them.
Yeah. So what is the so what's the, you've talked about the high stress. Yes. So in the low stress women, was there any variation too, like in their menses, like get about the results?
Well, there will be some variation, but that's not really what you want to focus on. There might be some, but if they make the cutoff.
So what was the main focus? What was the research?
The research question?
To look for. Like, what was the research looking for? Like,
so the research is basically, so the hypothesis was, is high COVID stress related with changes in menstrual function?
Okay, so what was the answer?
The answer is yes.
It's yes.
If you score high on the COVID scale, you also report changes in your menstrual function, and we assess the 4 aspects of menstruation: duration, length, flow, as well as heaviness. Those were the 4 assessments that we made. And it's really kind of scary because some women reported, overall it's scattered, right? So they reported all these different changes. In fact, when you have high stress, you almost have twice the likelihood of having changes in your menstrual flow, which is really high. And even when we accounted for like education, vaccination, all those things, they were still really high. And 1 in 8 women actually reported changes in all of those. Because, women, we talk to each other and we know what it's like. It's like, hey, this one too. I got to worry about that as well. But I think the vaccination comment is the big one. Everyone thinks that, it had to do with the vaccine and we're ignoring it. But this is irrespective of vaccination. Women reported this. So thanks for asking that.
Wow, thank you so much. Okay, so I was really excited about it because it's great for us to have a lot of research into women's health so that we understand the issues. So what are your final words? Yes.
My final word is, I guess, whether it's related to women's health or not, it's just to follow your calling and follow your passion. Like, I love telling these stories, and it's important because for me, I become a representative for women. If I didn't do this work, we wouldn't be having this interview.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be talking about women's health the way that we are. We would say menstruation is taboo. No one talks about it, right? Female sexuality is taboo. But those things are things that if we don't share with each other, it can lead to like mental health issues. And it's good to know that you are normal, right? That whatever you're going through, someone else is experiencing the same thing. So validation is important. So follow your dreams or whatever your calling is. Just pursue it because we all have a purpose.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Martina, for coming.
Thank you for
enjoyed the
having
interview.
me.
We have learned a lot as well. Yes, so if you experience a similar thing during the COVID season, then I think you've had some better explanation to that. Keep following our page. We are on Facebook as Midwife Sally, Instagram, YouTube, and also on TikTok, all Midwife Sally. And she has a page as well.
I do.
Yeah, so if you want to follow her.
Yeah, I am on Instagram as Dr. Martina PhD. I'm on Twitter as Dr. Martina PhD. And my website is www.drmartinaphd.com.
Yeah, so go and follow her. She's really a great mentor. Okay, have a great day. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Midwife Sally.